Hey beautiful, welcome back to the mini-series. Hopefully by now you've had a chance to start implementing the information from my previous video. You're making an effort to put some more protein dense food into your meals and you're starting to find some strategies that work for you. So today we're going to move on to the second macronutrient. So we're going to be talking about carbohydrates, and it's going to be a little bit longer because I got a little bit to fit in, but bear with me because I will stick to the sort of need to know. So as I explained, oh, here's Sprinkles, he's coming to make an appearance. So as I explained in the first or the second video, I explained that my approach is more of a controlled carbohydrate approach, right? So meaning that I'm managing the amount of carbohydrates that my clients are incorporating into their diet. And what this boils down to, or the reason I do this, is because we all have our own unique carbohydrate tolerance. So how many carbohydrates we can eat without having a negative impact on our hormones, on our metabolism, and on our health. And this unique tolerance for carbohydrates is really quite individual. And there are a lot of different factors that can impact how many carbs you can get away with. Okay, off you go. So some of the different things that come into play. So number one would be, obviously, are you in perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause? If you remember, I talked about the link between estrogen and insulin resistance. And so if you're post-menopause, there's a pretty good chance that you have more insulin resistance than a woman who is 44. So that could have an impact. Another thing that can be a big impact is just like how much you move throughout the day. Do you have a desk job, or are you out and about moving around all day long? Do you exercise regularly, or are you quite sedentary? Do you have more body fat on your body, or are you more muscular? How have you been eating for the past 10, 20 years? If you've been eating this standard American diet and you're just now thinking, okay, I've got to clean things up, you might not get away with as many carbs. If your doctor has already told you that you have insulin resistance, or you're pre-diabetic, or you have type 2 diabetes, or you have metabolic syndrome, you might not get away with as many carbs. If you practice intermittent fasting, you might be able to get away with more carbs. So there's lots and lots of different factors. So where do we begin? So generally speaking, what I have found for myself and for my clients is that women, I'm assuming certain things about you. I'm assuming that you're over the age of 40 because you're in this group, and potentially in your 50s, 60s, and even 70s. I'm assuming that because you're in your 40s and beyond, you probably have a little bit more insulin resistance. You probably have more cortisol floating around in your body. You probably have a busy life and less time to work out. You probably have less muscle mass because of sarcopenia. And so I'm going to guess that you would probably do better with a lower carb approach. And that's what I do for myself as well as for my clients. And what I mean by lower carb would be 150 grams or less. Now, again, not knowing anything about you, I can't tell you what your unique tolerance for carbohydrates is, but I'm going to guess that you will do better off with a lower carb approach. Now, how do we start to incorporate that? So I'm going to give you a super simple way of thinking about carbohydrates that you can start to implement again this week, and start really just kind of paying attention to how many carbohydrates are in your life. And I'm going to place carbohydrates in 3 categories: green, yellow, and red. So green means go, yellow means proceed with caution, and red means avoid. I'm not going to say stop, because I don't believe that we should deprive ourselves of anything, because that's that whole diet mentality, and it just leads to that all or nothing thinking that women struggle with, and that is oftentimes the reason that they can't stick to the program. So quickly, in our green category, green means go. That means you can fill your boots, eat as many as you want. The more the better. It's pretty simple. Low carb vegetables, and berries. Okay, that's all I'm going to put in that category for you. So low carb vegetables, this is everything like broccoli, cauliflower, zucchini, all the greens, eggplant, radishes, cherry tomatoes, like all of those lower carb vegetables. And don't worry, I'll give you a list, as well as berries, which are considered low glycemic fruit. In other words, they don't raise your blood sugar levels as much as other fruit do. That's green. That means go for it. Fill your boots, fill your plate. Okay. Then we have our yellow category, which is our proceed with caution. And what I teach my clients in this yellow category are what I call smart carbs. And smart carbs are carbohydrates that are higher in fiber and slower to digest. And they come from real whole food. So the rest of fruit, right? So bananas, apples, mangoes, pineapple, grapes, all of the fruit, right? Root vegetables, like starchy vegetables, think like yams, potatoes, sweet potatoes, whole grains, gluten grains, non-gluten grains, whichever, all kinds of whole grains, beans and legumes, okay? So again, they have not been processed. They are whole. Those are your smart carbs. And I say proceed with caution because it's not that those carbs are necessarily bad for you as long as you're getting them in the right amounts, which is going to be based on your unique tolerance for carbohydrates. And then in our final category, which is our avoid category, I know you already know what I'm going to be talking about here, but sugar, right? Any kind of sugar, candy, chocolate, ice cream, all of that, donuts, blah, blah, blah. Any kind of refined, processed carbohydrate, crackers, cereal, bread, pastries, muffins, anything that's been refined, right, is going to fall in that category, and alcohol. Okay, I'm going to put that in our avoid category as well. So what I recommend doing, and again, I will give you a cheat sheet that will give you a sense of how you classify these carbohydrates, but I want to give you a simple way, once again, a very simple tool that you can start applying today. So here's how you build your plate. You already know that I would say that at every meal, you want to have at least a palm of protein-dense foods. So what happens with the rest of our plate? I would recommend that at least half of your plate is going to now be composed of green light foods, right? So our low carb vegetables and our berries. And then a quarter of your plate, because that's all that's left, because you've already taken up a quarter of the plate with protein, a half of the plate with your green light carbs. That quarter of a plate, that small little sliver, that's where your smart carbs are going to go. That's where you can have the higher glycemic fruit, or the sweet potato, or the quinoa, or the wild rice, or whatever it may be. As for our red light carbs, especially if you have a goal of losing weight, I would save those for special occasions. Maybe save them for once or twice a week. See what you can get away with, because again, you have your own unique tolerance for carbohydrates. Maybe you can get away with 3 servings of red light foods in your week. But if you have a weight loss goal, maybe you can only get away with 1, or maybe you can only have 1 every couple of weeks. But this is where you really have to start playing around and experimenting. So here's what I want you to do. If you watch this video to the end, it means that you're committed to this, and you want to get those tools, and you want to get into action. So I want you to respond back to me, get back to me, and just say that you've watched the video. I'm going to send you a cheat sheet with, again, sort of like a description of what those green light foods are, those yellow light foods, and those red light foods, so that you can start to assess what you're actually doing right now. And I'll also ask you a few questions about yourself to give you a little bit of a sense of where you might want to start out. Just again, to give me a sense of where you're at in this menopause transition. How active are you? What does your current nutrition look like? Have you been diagnosed with diabetes? And I'll be able to guide you a little bit more by you giving me some answers to those questions. So hit stop, send me a quick note, and let's get you moving on this second macronutrient. Bye.